Greetings, optimists. Welcome back to Oddball Optimism. Today, we're diving into a topic that's both timely and timeless, a subject that's as old as humanity itself but is still poorly understood: the psychology of war. We'll be exploring this through the lens of the ongoing Russia-Ukraine conflict, a war that has gripped the world's attention since February 2022. But before we dig in, don't forget to like and share our video, and also subscribe to our YouTube channel. The Russia-Ukraine conflict has its roots in the complex history of the region. Following the dissolution of the Soviet Union in 1991, Ukraine declared independence, marking the beginning of a new era of unease between Russia and Ukraine. The Orange Revolution in Ukraine in 2004, which saw a shift towards pro-Western leadership, further strained these relations. Several key issues have contributed to the conflict. Territorial disputes, particularly over Crimea and the Donbass region, have been a major source of tension. Ethnic and linguistic differences have also played a role, with a significant Russian-speaking population in eastern Ukraine. Economic factors, including disputes over gas prices and trade relationships, have further exacerbated the conflict. The conflict escalated dramatically following the 2014 Ukrainian Revolution, which led to the ousting of pro-Russian President Yanukovych. Russia responded by annexing Crimea, a move widely condemned by the international community. This was followed by a pro-Russian insurgency in eastern Ukraine, leading to a full-blown war. The conflict has been characterized by differing narratives. Russia has justified its actions as a defense of the rights of Russian-speaking minorities, while Ukraine views it as a violation of its sovereignty. The EU and the US have largely supported Ukraine, imposing sanctions on Russia, while also attempting to mediate the conflict. In Ukraine, the political landscape has been marked by a struggle between pro-European and pro-Russian factions. The war in the east has led to a significant humanitarian crisis, with millions of people displaced from their homes. The economic situation has also been challenging, with corruption and economic mismanagement exacerbating the problems. In Russia, the economic sanctions have led to increased prices and a decline in living standards for many people. There have been numerous protests against the government's actions, reflecting a growing dissatisfaction among the populace. For the common people in both Russia and Ukraine, the political instability has had far-reaching consequences. It has also led to significant internal conflict in both countries. In Ukraine, the government has struggled to maintain control over the eastern regions, where separatist movements have gained strength. The conflict has also deepened divisions within Ukrainian society, leading to increased polarization. In Russia, the government's actions in Ukraine have been a source of controversy. While some support the government's actions, others see them as a dangerous escalation that could lead to further conflict. The conflict has strained Russia's relations with the West and has led to a re-evaluation of NATO's role in European security. The situation has also raised questions about the effectiveness of international law and the ability of the international community to respond to such conflicts. But what drives nations to war? What psychological factors are at play? Research suggests that fear, honor, and interest are the three primary motivators. Russia, fearing the loss of influence over a former Soviet state and seeking to uphold its image as a global power, launched an aggressive campaign against Ukraine. Ukraine, for its part, has fought to defend its sovereignty and the democratic ideals it holds dear. This struggle between fear, honor, and interest is a recurring theme in conflicts around the world, and understanding it can provide valuable insights into the psychology of war. In the case of Russia and Ukraine, nationalism, fueled by historical grievances and territorial disputes, is a significant driver of the conflict. The perceived threat to national identity and sovereignty can lead to heightened aggression and a willingness to go to war. Power dynamics, both within and between nations, also played a crucial role. The struggle for power and influence escalated tensions and led to conflict. Propaganda and media manipulation are other important factors as they can shape perceptions of the conflict, stoke fear and hatred, and mobilize support for war. The use of disinformation and fake news further fueled the conflict, creating a climate of uncertainty and fear. Both sides have been accused of spreading false or misleading information to shape public opinion and gain international support. For instance, Russia has been accused of spreading false narratives about the nature of the Ukrainian government and the intentions of the Ukrainian military. Ukraine, on the other hand, has been accused of exaggerating Russian aggression and spreading false information about the conflict to gain international support. This manipulation of information is not just a tool of war, but a weapon in itself, with the power to sway public opinion and influence the course of the conflict. This conflict is a stark reminder of how psychological factors, intertwined with historical, political, and social issues, can drive nations to war. Understanding these dynamics is crucial for resolving conflicts and promoting peace. As Carl Rogers once said, "When I look at the world, I'm pessimistic, but when I look at people, I am optimistic." It is this optimism, rooted in our understanding of human psychology, that can guide us towards a more peaceful world. War has a profound impact on the collective consciousness of societies. It shapes how people view themselves, their nation, and others. This war has stirred up nationalist sentiments, reinforced in-group biases, and created stereotypes about the enemy. However, it has also sparked global outrage and solidarity, with people around the world rallying to support Ukraine. The short-term ripple effects of the war are evident in the widespread displacement, loss of life, economic impact, and psychological trauma. The war has disrupted every aspect of life, from education and healthcare to commerce and infrastructure. It has also created a climate of fear and uncertainty, affecting the mental health of the population. The long-term impact of the war on future generations is harder to predict, but it is likely to be profound. The memories of war and its aftermath will shape the values, beliefs, and identity of future generations. Intergenerational trauma, national narratives, and the role of education will all play a part in shaping future perspectives. The Holodomor, the man-made famine in Ukraine in the 1930s, can be seen as a traumatic event that has been repressed in the collective memory but continues to influence the collective psyche. The Russia-Ukraine conflict will undoubtedly change the way people think in both countries. It may lead to shifts in political ideologies, national identity, and public opinion. It may also influence future policies, international relations, and regional dynamics. The psychological and emotional toll of war on individuals is immense. The constant fear, trauma, and loss experienced during war has led to a rise in mental health issues such as post-traumatic stress disorder, depression, and anxiety. For instance, a study conducted by the World Health Organization found that nearly 1 in 5 people in conflict-affected areas has a mental health condition, with women, children, and the elderly being particularly vulnerable. War also has a profound impact on the social fabric of nations and communities. It can lead to divisions and animosity among different ethnic, religious, and cultural groups, straining social cohesion. The destruction of infrastructure, displacement of populations, and loss of livelihoods has led to a rise in poverty, unemployment, and a decline in living standards. Historical examples further illustrate this impact. The siege of Leningrad during World War II, for instance, led to extreme hunger and hardship among the civilian population. According to the International Monetary Fund, Ukraine's annual real GDP growth rate contracted by 35% in 2022. This is the steepest decline in GDP recorded in the 3 decades since the country gained independence in 1991. When it comes to war, there are always deeper psychological forces at play, forged from the collective traumas and fears that fuel the conflict, to the archetypal narratives and symbols that shape our understanding of it. There is a need to explore how societal norms, ideologies, and structures can create an environment conducive to war. For example, the glorification of war and violence in certain cultures, the dehumanization of the enemy, and the societal pressure to conform to nationalist narratives can all contribute to the escalation of conflict. In the Russia-Ukraine war, we can see that war is not just a political or military phenomenon, but a social and psychological one as well. Psychoanalytic theories, pioneered by Sigmund Freud, provide a framework for understanding the complex psychological dynamics at play in the Russia-Ukraine conflict. Freud's theory, with its emphasis on unconscious drives and conflicts, offers insights into the deep-seated fears and desires that can fuel conflict. The Oedipus complex, one of Freud's most controversial theories, can be seen as a metaphor for the rivalries and power struggles that underlie the conflict. The Oedipus complex refers to a child's feelings of desire for the opposite-sex parent and rivalry with the same-sex parent. The motherland or fatherland is often personified in nationalistic rhetoric, and citizens' love for their country can be compared to a child's love for their parent. In this case, both Russia and Ukraine have a strong desire for control over the disputed territories, which can be likened to the child's desire for the opposite-sex parent in the Oedipus complex. The fear of castration represents the child's fear of punishment or loss. This can be seen in the fear of losing political power, territorial control, or international standing. The conflict is eventually resolved when the child identifies with the same-sex parent and internalizes their values and norms. A similar resolution could potentially occur if one party were to identify with the other and seek a peaceful resolution based on shared values and norms. Although this is a metaphorical interpretation and not a literal one, the Oedipus complex, primarily a theory of individual psychological development, provides a useful framework for understanding the deep-seated psychological dynamics that can underlie conflicts like the Russia-Ukraine war. As we delve deeper into the labyrinth of the Russia-Ukraine conflict and the overarching psychology of warfare, it's imperative that we cast our gaze towards the horizon. What does the future hold in the aftermath of such conflicts? In a world where fear and animosity are all too often the architects of division, how can we cultivate an environment of peace and mutual understanding? The solutions to these queries are far from straightforward, but they invariably start with us. Education is our first line of defense. By arming ourselves with knowledge, we can challenge our own biases and become advocates for peace and justice. Conflict resolution strategies such as negotiation, mediation, and reconciliation can serve as the compass guiding us towards this path. These strategies could manifest in the form of diplomatic dialogues, ceasefires, and peace accords. However, success hinges on the willingness of all parties to participate in good faith and make necessary concessions. The road to peace is fraught with challenges, and the current situation in the Russia-Ukraine region does cast a long shadow over the prospects of a swift resolution. The lessons we learn from this conflict, about the cost of war and the value of peace, can guide us towards a more hopeful future. In conclusion, the psychology of war is a complex and multifaceted field. It encompasses individual and collective behaviors, conscious and subconscious processes, and a wide range of emotions and motivations. By understanding these dynamics, we can better navigate the challenges of conflict and work towards a more peaceful world. But understanding is just the first step. We must also take action. We must challenge the narratives that justify war, advocate for peaceful solutions, and support those affected by conflict. As we reflect on the Russia-Ukraine conflict, let's remember the wise words of Immanuel Kant: peace is not just the absence of war, but the presence of justice, the promotion of understanding, and the fostering of human dignity. That's it for today, optimists. Remember, even in the face of war, there's always room for hope, for empathy, and for understanding. Stay curious, stay critical, and, as always, stay optimistic. Let's continue the conversation in the comments below. What are your thoughts on the Russia-Ukraine conflict? How do you think we can promote peace and understanding in times of conflict? We'd love to hear your thoughts.